Steven Spielberg's Jaws from 1975 is one of the quintessential, no pun intended, summer blockbusters ever, and one of the most well-regarded horror films of all time. While the novel that the film is based on by Peter Benchley spent 44 weeks on the bestseller list, the film is certainly more well-known now and ends up on countless top 10 lists. Jaws is undeniably a classic, but how close does it follow its own novel? Hop in the shark cage with us as we find out what the f*** really happened to this horror movie. I want to thank you guys for watching What the F*** Really Happened to this horror movie, and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. First and foremost, Jaws isn't based on a true story, the book or the movie. Peter Benchley based his novel on a handful of things. First, there was the fact that he and his father Nathaniel used to go fishing in Nantucket quite often while he was growing up, and they would encounter sharks all the time. While interested in sharks most his life, Benchley would be inspired when reading about the story of fisherman Frank Mundus, who was able to catch a shark weighing over 4,500 pounds. While discussing possible book ideas with the editor of Doubleday, they both settled on the idea of a shark attacking a small resort town. Benchley had his assignment, and between his childhood experience, the tale of Frank Mundus, and the Jersey Shore shark attacks of 1916, he had his basic outline. The two main comparisons to look at when discussing books versus their film counterparts are the characters and the plot. The main protagonist in both mediums is Police Chief Martin Brody, who in the film is played by Roy Scheider. He is a loving and involved father and husband, and is shown to be compassionate to anyone and everyone, particularly during the frightening time of the shark attacks. While he knows it's his duty to go into the ocean and try to stop the great white, he is definitely scared and understanding he is out of his element. While the overall meat and potatoes of Sheriff Martin Brody are the same from book to film, book Brody has a few differences. First, he is described as a tough ex-cop who grew up on the Lower East Side of New York City and joined the force at just 18 years old. This sets up a stereotypical tough guy machismo persona and would have made sense to go with the original casting choice of Charlton Heston, who doesn't have quite the same charisma as Roy Scheider. Book Brody is also somewhat morally nebulous and even prone to violence when getting into it with other characters. While the three men in the boat on the film are far from best friends, they seem to bond over the experience, while Book Brody even attempts to choke Hooper at one point. Movie Brody is the lighter, more likable version of his literary counterpart. Matt Hooper is played by Richard Dreyfuss in the film after a recommendation by Spielberg friend and collaborator George Lucas when he heard that the character had not been cast with just over a week left before shooting began. Hooper in the film is a consulting oceanographer brought in to verify the shark attack on the first victim, Chrissy, when the mayor attempts to say it was caused by a boating accident. Hooper is a genial and sarcastic character that has no prior history with the town or its characters, and while he's out of his element hunting a great white shark, he bonds with the other two men on the boat and proves his worth out on the open sea when things get rough. Book Hooper is even more different to his film counterpart than that of his shark hunting cohort Brody. Hooper in the novel is the younger sibling to a man that dated Sheriff Brody's wife before she was married. He's an ichthyologist who is instead recruited by newspaper editor Harry Meadows when he seeks advice on how to deal with the shark. Hooper and Quint actively hate each other for being from different worlds, and Hooper is mortified by Quint's use of a baby dolphin and the gutting of a blue shark to lure their prey out of the depths. Finally, while the setup for the final encounter with the shark are the same in both mediums, Hooper's fate differs wildly from book to film, but more on that later. The singularly named Quint, portrayed famously by legendary tough guy Robert Shaw, was first offered to Sterling Hayden and Lee Marvin. While Marvin and Hayden would have certainly added their own dimensions to the character, Shaw often steals the scenes he's in and has some of the best dialogue in the entire film. Movie Quint is introduced pretty early on when he offers to catch the shark for a fee of $10,000. Quint starts off very solitary and one-track minded, but over the course of the movie ends up bonding and working well with both Hooper and Brody. During one of the nights on the boat, Hooper and Quint get drunk and start to show off how they got their scars before Quint tells his harrowing story aboard the USS Indianapolis. When the shark breaks through the hull and the men work to repair the ship, Quint has now taken it personally and smashes the radio to stop Brody from calling in help. With the boat nearly destroyed completely, Quint is eaten when the shark jumps up onto the boat. Of the three main characters, Quint is the one that differs most from book to screen. Not only is Book Quint not in most of the story compared to Robert Shaw's screen time, but he also has none of the personality. The book version is a stand-in for Captain Ahab with his ruthless devotion to killing the shark. He doesn't even care when Brody tells him there's no more money in it for him. Book Quint also has half the dialogue of his film version. While he is salty to his fellow shipmates, possibly coming out more on screen due to the clashing of the actors portraying the characters actually not liking each other at times, he has none of the fun lines. There's no comparing of scars, no singing shanties while drunk, and certainly no opening up to the other two about his harrowing experience with sharks on the USS Indianapolis. The last big change comes at the end with his death, as it's changed from a rather quiet scene of being dragged into the ocean to an all-out brawl where he attempts to stab the shark from inside its mouth and kill it while being eaten alive. Additionally, the other minor characters have varying degrees of change. Mayor of Amity Island Larry Vaughn, played here by character actor Murray Hamilton, is a bit of a snake oil salesman who understands that the whole of Amity's revenue comes from it being a beach resort town. He tries to dissuade Sheriff Brody from closing the beaches down, and even tries to change the narrative to the fact that people aren't being eaten by a shark, instead succumbing to horrible boating accidents. It's only after another shark attack on the 4th of July that the mayor finally relents to having the beaches closed, and having men go after the shark. Book Mayor is just as slimy, but he has ulterior motives for wanting to keep the beaches open and the revenue flowing. He's also easily manipulated by the editor of the newspaper, Harry Meadows, who is a main character in the book and is only seen in one short sequence in the film played by the other screenwriter, Carl Gottlieb. He also decides to leave town near the end of the novel and tells Brody's wife Ellen that they would have made a good couple, a scene completely missing from the film. Speaking of Ellen Brody, played here by Lorraine Gary, her character is a loving wife and mother who is supportive of both her husband and her children. She mostly stays on the sidelines for the movie, apart from the Hitchcock-inspired 4th of July sequence and a scene with Hooper visiting the Brodys for dinner. Gary was actually kind of upset after the script was changed, as she knew who her character was in the book, and also knew that meant not having much of a character arc or impactful scenes. Book Ellen is a much more complex character with subplots of her own. She questions the excitement of her life with Brody, and even begins an illicit affair with one of the other main characters before having the realization that her life really hasn't been that bad. The characters are all here, with varying degrees of book accuracy, but how is the plot? Does the story follow beat for beat what is written on the page? Spielberg's Jaws opens with a skinny dipper being attacked with a now famous POV shot having the audience be complicit in the shark's attack, while also showing how powerful and menacing it can be. Brody wants the beaches closed, but the mayor is able to convince him that it was a boating accident and is backed up by the coroner. The sheriff accepts this until a young boy is killed, and it's quite clear Shark is the culprit. Both the film and the book open in nearly identical ways, with the same skinny dipper named Chrissy being eaten, and the mayor trying to cover it up and change the sheriff's mind. The book differs slightly, with editor Harry Meadows playing a much larger part in both the decision and the book as a whole. Alex Kinter is the name of the boy in both mediums that meets the same fate shortly after, but in the book an elderly man also gets eaten in the same scene. The movie then opens a bounty on the shark, while Matt Hooper is brought in to confirm that Chrissy was also eaten by a shark to give Brody the reasons he needs to close the beach. Quint offers his help for $10,000 in one of the most famous scenes in the film. This section of the book is significantly different. Ben Gardner is hired to track and kill the shark, but goes missing before his boat returns abandoned and with a large shark bite. Brody asks the mayor to close the beaches again, but again is told no. Newspaper editor Harry Meadows looks into possible reasons why the mayor would be so bullish on keeping the beaches open, only to find out that he has mafia ties and needs to keep the real estate value higher as the mob has invested significant funds in the town. It is only here that Hooper is asked to come consult, and it's done by Meadows. The entire subplot, including the bulk of Meadows' character, is completely missing from the film adaptation. The film continues with Hooper and Brody investigating the attacks when some fishermen catch a rather large tiger shark. Neither men believe the shark to be the culprit, and no human remains are found within it. The pair find a damaged ship on the water with a massive shark tooth and the head of fisherman Ben Gardner before begging the mayor to close the beaches. He refuses again until another shark attack happens on the 4th of July, and he finally relents, closing the beaches and hiring Quint. The book also has the attack that causes the beaches to be closed, but it's Brody who forcefully closes them and hires Quint, who had not been mentioned before in the book up to this point. It's also during this later time frame that Hooper is introduced. Ellen Brody has an affair with him as she has become bored with her life and looks to rekindle some of the fire she had with Hooper's older brother some years before she married Martin. The movie then moves to the three men's adventure on the boat hunting the shark. While they don't get along great at first, they slowly build a bond, and after seeing the size of the shark and Quint successfully harpooning it to track it, they get drunk and exchange stories before Quint gives his legendary speech about his survival. The men of the book also set out to sea, but absolutely hate each other. Quint and Hooper are always at odds with who they are on every level, while Brody and Hooper have a tension due to the affair, which eventually leads to Brody nearly strangling Hooper to death. While the companions of the movie stay on the water day and night, The book trio actually come home after every uneventful day. The mayor also visits the Brody house to tell them that he and his wife are leaving, while also telling Ellen that they would have been a great couple. Another subplot that is wiped clean for the adaptation. The shark attacks the boat at night during the film, and the three heroes scramble to fix the damage. In a fit of obsessed rage, Quint destroys the radio that prevents them from calling for help, and the shark destroys much of the rest of the boat after Quint nails it with another harpoon. With few options, Hooper volunteers to go into a shark cage and attempt to jab the beast with strychnine, but is quickly disarmed when the cage is destroyed. He flees to the ocean floor and the shark jumps onto the boat where it kills Quint. Thinking fast, Brody gets a scuba tank into the monster's mouth before uttering one of the film's best lines and blowing the shark to bits with Quint's rifle before reuniting with Hooper and swimming back home. The book's ending sequence is about as different as you could get from the film. Hooper decides to use a shark cage and a bang stick this time to stop the shark, and initially Quint refuses. The boat is in good shape here rather than sinking, and they aren't quite out of options. Hooper pays Quint $100, and when he goes into the cage, it's destroyed like the film, but there is no escape for Hooper here as he is violently dispatched. The two remaining men go home for the night before coming back out to sea for one more day. The final day sees the shark aggressively attacking the boat, and after Quint connects with multiple harpoons, the shark breaks up much of the boat and drags Quint to a much sadder and less exciting death by drowning. Brody fully expects to be next, but as the shark gets right up to him, it simply dies from blood loss, sinking to the bottom of the sea with Quint still attached to its body. Brody watches this in stunned silence before paddling his way home. Even with author Peter Benchley writing a draft of the script, the film and book version of Jaws start out similar but end up being incredibly different. The book has unlikable characters and a ton of subplots dealing with cheating spouses and government leaders in the mob's pockets. Spielberg decided to eschew these sections in favor of a more straightforward summer blockbuster, and if ticket sales and fan admiration are any indication, he made the right call.
Shark still looks fake.